Welcome to Unstuck with Hydro Wellness Lab, the podcast where real people share the real stories behind getting their lives, their bodies, and their mindsets back on track. I'm your host, Bretton Hunt, and in every episode, we dive into powerful conversations with athletes, weekend warriors, health and wellness professionals, and everyday people who refuse to settle. These are the breakthroughs, the setbacks, the mindset shifts, the moments that get us unstuck. So today's guest is someone who's super passionate about helping people take the guesswork out of health and fitness. Kevin Pasciak is a board-certified exercise physiologist and nutritionist and owner of KP3 Coaching right here in Arizona. For more than a decade, he has helped everyone from everyday people trying to lose weight to endurance athletes looking to improve performance by using real physiological data instead of trends and guesswork. Kevin specializes in VO2 max testing, resting metabolic testing, heart zone analysis, and personalized coaching to help people better understand how their bodies actually work. So today we're going to dive into VO2 max, metabolic testing, everything health and wellness with Kevin. And we're also going to talk a little bit about an event that we have coming up this Saturday. So Kevin, thanks for joining me today. I really appreciate it.
For sure, Bretton. Thanks for having me, man. I'm excited to be here, excited about our most recent partnership to talk about this open house and to just share with everyone what I do. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem. Hey, so on that note, tell us a little bit about yourself. Who are you? How'd you get into kinesiology and exercise physiology? How'd you get here?
Sure. Okay, so we'll just start with kind of the beginning. I grew up kind of the chunky kid, the not super athletic kid. I could hold my own in baseball and in the weight room and whatnot, but I really wasn't ever athletic, although I always had this aspiration of like being an athlete, like not like a pro athlete, not a I need to be in the MLB or anything like that, but I just want to be fit. I want to be able to hold my own, go on a run, lift the weights, blah, 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 right? Um, and so in high school, I was blessed to be able to train with Coach Anderson, Mark Anderson in Indiana, who just completely transformed everything for me. Mindset, physical, everything that goes into being a disciplined athlete, I learned from Coach A, right? How to show up, how to do it when you don't want to, how to have the mindset to do it even though it hurts, blah, 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 all of the things, learned how important nutrition was. He always said food is fuel for the body, and that really stuck with me. Fast forward a little bit to college, I had plans to be physical therapy. I was pre-physical therapy, so my degree was exercise science. And I had total plans of going to PT school and going that route until I took exercise physiology, in particular the lab portion where we ran lactate threshold tests, VO2 max tests, body composition tests with hydrostatic weighing, just all of these really cool hands-on learning about your body types of experiments, right? That changed everything for me. From there on, I knew I was not going into physical therapy. I wanted to specialize in metabolic testing, do resting metabolic rate testing, VO2 max testing. At the time, I was a cyclist. And so I was putting together how I could use this data to improve my own fitness with cycling. Long story short, I ended up getting into a few human studies for cyclists. So they tested how caffeine affects the body, how glucose affects the body, how altitude affects the body, blah, blah, blah. It was in a handful of different studies, and I just fell in love with being in the lab. Luckily, I lived in Indianapolis, which is home of Methodist Hospital, which had the only VO2 max testing lab in the state being used for medical purposes. Got in there, was trained by Dr. Emery. He was my sports cardiologist mentor. Dr. Fulkerson and Dr. Sullivan were my pulmonology and internal med and sleep mentors and everything like that. And really, I just fell in love with being able to run a test on anyone, fit, unfit, diseased, non-diseased, everything like that, and being able to send them away with data that meant something. This is your heart rate at this intensity, which means we should be spending more time at this intensity, less time at this intensity. This data is telling me how you use carbohydrates versus fats. And so this is how we're going to tailor your nutrition program, blah, 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 right? Everybody, during this whole process, I learned that no two metabolisms are the same. And so therefore, there is not a one-size-fits-all program. And what works for you may not work for me, and what works for me may not work for you. There are basic fundamentals to physiology and nutrition and everything like that. However, there's so much biodiversity from person to person that having this data can really take everything to a whole nother level and eliminate the guesswork. Branching off of what you said earlier, my whole thing is get rid of guesswork, work with data, make everything data driven.
Love it. How long have you been doing this?
So I graduated in 2016, ended up at the hospital early 2017, was there for 5 years, probably ran about 2,000 tests in my time there. And then right after we moved to Arizona, I went self-employed. I invested in my own analyzer to be able to continue testing people for my own business. Um, and so, long story short, 10, 12 years has been my exposure to testing. Me actually running testing, about 10 years.
Awesome. What
Yeah,
would you say the biggest misconception about your profession is? Like when you tell people, yeah, I'm an exercise physiologist, what do you think people, tend to think that it is? Oh, it's this, and it's actually not, it's this. What's the biggest misconception people have?
sure, sure. So there's really a lot of different avenues that an exercise physiologist can go down because of our kind of broad training in overall sciences. So the main misconception, to answer your question first, would be, oh, you must do cardiac rehab, or you must do like stress testing in a hospital, right? 90% of exercise physiologists that apply for a job and get an exercise phys degree are probably doing something like that. There's not a lot of exercise physics that get lucky like I did and land in a research lab or an actual metabolic testing lab or a heart failure lab like I did. So really the main misconception is, oh, you are either with cardiac rehab, or the other side of things, a lot of people think, oh, you must do what they do in Colorado Springs at the Olympic Training Center. That's too much for me. I don't need that, right? Because people either think VO2 max test, Lance Armstrong getting after it, or they don't think of the heart failure side of things. They don't think of the person who's never exercised a day in their life and the fact that they do need this test just as much as the elite athlete. So main misconception, they think I'm working with cardiac rehab, or the total other side of the spectrum, they think I'm working with Olympic athletes.
Love it. And you're like, I'm just somewhere in the middle, guys. Like,
Yeah, yeah. A little bit of them, a little bit of them, mostly in between.
love it. So
Yeah.
you mentioned you enjoy getting into the data to help people. What is it specifically about that aspect of helping people that you enjoy the most?
So we all have the same overall potential to get better, right? Obviously, those of us that are already elite or are Olympic athletes, their room for growth is it's smaller, right? However, the same basic principles applied to most people on earth relative to their fitness level, they're going to be able to get better, right? And so really the whole data driven, what gets me going with that and being able to help people is I love being able to run a test on someone that has trouble with, I mean, fill in the blank, walking up and down the street, getting up and down. I mean, someone that is very low level and showing them, like, look, you may be low level, but that doesn't mean you can't get better, right? And all you got to do is hang at this heart rate for this many minutes or hang at this heart rate for this many seconds, right? And as long as we stick to those principles and understand that it's the basic fundamentals of training that are going to make us better, not your starting point, right? I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. We all start at different starting points, right? And so being able to implement those things that don't change the training aspect with the heart, rate at a certain number and all that, and then seeing the results come from that, regardless of where you start at, is a really cool thing. So,
Exactly,
I,
exactly. And yeah. And just kind of to branch off of that, like a zone two session, right, for me is going to look very different than a zone two session for someone just getting started or a zone two session of a marathon runner, right? Just because it's zone two doesn't mean we're doing the same things, right? It's
Mhm.
zone two for you. It's zone two for me. Just like you learned when we ran your test, I don't know, a month ago or whatever, your zone two is totally different. You achieve that intensity by getting there in your own way, right? A certain amount of body weight on the boost mill versus speed and incline, blah, blah, blah. How you achieve that intensity, though, it doesn't matter as long as you are achieving the right intensity.
Awesome. I love it. So, well, when it comes to heart rate zones, could you explain a little bit, what are the heart rate zones? What are the numbers that people need to kind of be familiar with when it comes to those things, when it comes to training, wanting to optimize their training?
So we'll talk about just the basic idea of what heart rate zones are first. Ultimately, as exercise gets harder, heart rate goes up. And it's a perfectly linear relationship as long as there's nothing going on physiologically or anything like that. As under normal circumstances, as workload increases, heart rate follows linearly, right? And so our zones are just taking our spectrum of heart rates from when we start to when we can't go any longer, right? We then try to spend certain amount of times of our training in each one of these zones because each zone will lead to different adaptations physiologically, right? Spending time in zones 1 and 2 are going to help you with your aerobic endurance. They're going to make you more efficient with burning fat. They're going to keep the impact on your joints lower, right? So there's also a mechanical side of this, but really the time we're spending at certain intensities leads to certain adaptations. Harder is not always better. The adaptations you get down in zones 1 and 2 start to flush out, and you start working on different adaptations as you get into zones 3, 4, and 5, right? And so I always go back to every workout needs to have an objective, right? We need to have a goal for that workout. And heart rate zones give us that guidance or that target intensity to make sure we're achieving the objective for that workout, right? And so again, bottom end is more working on aerobic endurance. As you get more and more intense, you're starting to work on lactate tolerance, anaerobic threshold, VO2 max. You're building more and more mitochondria to be able to withstand higher and higher workloads, right? However, again, you don't get those adaptations from working down here, and you don't get these adaptations from working up here. And so the balance of spending certain amounts of time in each heart rate zone on a rolling 7 to 10 day basis is really important. Overtraining can really easily occur if we're always thinking harder is better, right? Plateauing will very quickly happen if we're always thinking harder is better, right? You kind of followed that question with give me some numbers that some people should maybe be thinking about for this, right? I hesitate to do that because of what we started our conversation with, this huge idea of biodiversity, right? I have seen zone twos end at a heart rate of 115. I've seen zone twos end at a heart rate of 155, right? And that's not necessarily a really old person versus a really young person. That's just a totally different level of fitness, right? And so this whole 220 minus your age to get theoretical max heart rate and then using certain percentages of that, there's literally no empirical data to support that. I'll send you the paper.
That's awesome.
There's nothing to support it. It was really just one of those, this is better than nothing, let's roll with it type of things. However, here we are 50, 60, 70 years later, and we're still seeing this formula on treadmills to help us determine our target heart rates, right? What I would rather give you guidance on if we can't, or if we're in between testing, right, and we're trying to figure out a good idea of our zones, really, I would rather see you try to find we're going to break it into 3 zones at this point. We're going to have a zone 1, a zone 2, and a zone 3. Okay. The bridge between zone 1 and zone 2 is when you can no longer breathe only through your nose. Okay. It's really pretty cool how it lines up with your metabolic data. You needing to transition from nasal breathing to a combination of nasal and oral almost always corresponds with your aerobic threshold, which is the top of your zone 2, right? So we're just going to call that zone 1. Now we're going to think, okay, and so as you're trying to figure out what your number is for that, get on a treadmill every 30 seconds or a minute, make it a little bit harder. Think, okay, I have to breathe through my mouth now. What's your heart rate at that point? That's your number. Okay. So I'm not going to say anywhere between 115 and 135. I'm going to say, when do you need to transition from nasal to oral breathing? That's your zone 2. Okay. On the flip side, keep that intensity going, right? Let it get harder and harder and harder. You're already breathing through your mouth and your nose. There's going to be a point when you start to hyperventilate. You have to exhale more than you're inhaling. Okay. That's the start of your anaerobic threshold. The anaerobic threshold, by definition, is the point in which we can no longer buffer the lactic acid from our bloodstream with our bicarbonate, and we now need to start blowing off the CO2 to help that buffering occur, right? And so we can really simplify this pretty easily just by using your nose and your mouth and what you're doing with your breath. Your first threshold occurs when you transition from nasal to oral. Your second threshold, which is now zone 3 in our little 3-zone system, is when you transition from to I'm really breathing. I can only hold on to this intensity for 10 minutes, 5 minutes, right? Something like that. That point is the intensity you should be looking at for your next threshold. And so I'm not trying to make this too like in the weeds or anything like that, but we're going to make your 3-zone system equal to your 5-zone system by putting zones 1 and 2 in zone 1, zone 3 in zone 2, and zones 4 and 5 in zone 3. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
We are doing that because, as you know, Breton, we want to spend little to no time in zone 3. Zone 3 is no man's land. You're not working hard enough to produce the lactic acid that you need to get the hard work adaptations, for lack of better words. But you're also working too hard to get the work or the adaptations that you're looking for from your zone 2 intensities, right?
Right.
And so until you can dial in a 5-zone system, I'd rather see you work with a 3-zone system. You're either in zone 1 or you're in zone 3. The only time you're ever in zone 2 is when your heart rate's coming down from zone 3.
Okay.
You got
Makes
me?
sense. Yeah. Makes a lot of sense. So what would you tell someone? So like, say like they're just starting out, you're in between tests and all that. And they say, okay, well, what should I use to track my heart rate? Is an Apple Watch sufficient, or do you have a different, um, you know, tool that you like to recommend to people to use to get an accurate heart rate?
Awesome question, because it does matter. Honestly, anything is better than nothing, right? If you have an Apple Watch and that's all you've got for now, use it, but take it with a grain of salt, because optical sensors, like the ones that are in your Garmin or your Apple Watch or your Fitbit or the things that shine light, those are always going to become less and less accurate as you get more and more sweaty, more movement, more just moving and grooving, right? When you're walking and chilling, these do a pretty darn good job. When you start getting active and start sweating and this starts being able to slip a little bit and it's having trouble reading, you're not going to get the reading you want to use. And so to instead, you're going to want to use one of those heart rate straps, like the actual looks like a belt, goes around your chest, has a little sensor that sits, right at your sternum. Almost all of those nowadays will sync up to your wearable, whether you have a Garmin, a Sunto, an Apple Watch, a Fitbit, a whatever. You can generally get a strap to connect to it via Bluetooth or ANT Plus technology. And that is always going to be more accurate because it's no longer using light. It literally has 2 electrodes in that strap that are sitting on your skin, sensing your heartbeat. It's not just a sensor looking at light, it's truly reading electrical impulses. 10 times out of 10, if you can use a strap, use a strap. Use it always. Every
How, ex-
workout you ever do.
how expensive are those straps?
You could probably get into that market in like the $40 or $50 mark, I would imagine.
For
I
that.
usually Yeah, it's not too bad. I would generally recommend a good strap is the Polar H9 or H10. They generally are anywhere between like 75 and $100 on Amazon. Um, they last long. They connect to almost every device you can think of, and they've been around forever. I love my Garmin, but I will say the Garmin straps, I burned through way too many of them in a small amount of time, and at $130 a pop, it just wasn't worth it. Believe it or not, my wife is a head trainer at an F45 studio, and their F45 uses a heart rate system,
Hmm.
and they're what they call as a Lion Heart. I love them. They're rechargeable. They sync to all of my devices, and I've been on the same one for at least 2 or 3 years now.
Wow.
Uh, so really, even if you're not an F45 member, it might be worth going into your local studio and seeing if you can just pick up one of their heart rate straps.
Okay. That's awesome. That's really good info because I think, a lot of the time I just used my Apple Watch and other things. It's like, and the other thing I use too is kind of like what you're saying. Okay. When am I going from the to like the exhaling super quickly, almost hyperventilating, that kind of stuff. So, but it would be nice to know just to see it right there because there's so many times I'm looking at my Apple Watch. I'm like, that's not what my heart rate is. That's not right.
Yep.
So
Yep.
that's
And
awesome.
that's
So,
cool that you have the kind of you're so in tune with your body that like, no, that's not right.
right. Yeah.
That's really important to be able to decipher.
Well, there was one time I was running in the water treadmill here at our facility, and I'm looking at it, and I'm running 4 miles an hour in the water, and I can feel it, right? And I look down at my Apple Watch, and it's like 102. I'm like, that's not
Yeah.
right.
Yeah,
like
no, that's not
like
right.
that's not right. So I love that. I'm gonna have to look at those. What do you call it? Say Alpha Lion. But I'll have to look
Uh,
at those.
F45 Lion Heart.
Lionheart. Okay,
Yeah,
that's
yeah, check
awesome.
that out. I will
So
say they're not waterproof, so if you're going to be in the treadmill, keep that in mind.
yeah,
The water
good.
treadmill.
Yeah, probably not a good idea to mix that, but so
Garmin makes a waterproof one though, just so you know.
there you go. So you mentioned a little bit ago, like, you were mentioning that formula that people came up with to kind of get that heart rate, target heart rate. You're like, well, it's better than nothing, but it's really not all that correct. It's not all that accurate. What are other things that you've seen in the health and wellness world? Things that have been, out there for a really long time that've kind of become standard. And you're like, well, yeah, I guess that's better than nothing, but it's not the best.
Well, that's definitely the biggest one is the 220 minus age and then just simply using percentages of that to generate heart rate zones. That's definitely number one. I mean, the nutritionist in me definitely wants to go into the classic 2000 calorie diet or what the RDAs are right now or the recommended daily allowances or your recommended values. I mean, almost all of that is way out of date. So if you're if you're looking at your nutrition label and you're seeing 20 grams of protein, 20% of your daily value, no, that's probably not the case, right? And so, kind of that whole biodiversity thing, going back to testing, the same thing goes with nutrition. We're all so different. Our body composition and our activity levels and our lifestyle really drive our requirements, not just a generic number. And so I definitely have to bring that up because that's a very real one is the nutrition guidance that's been out there. Let's see, heart rates, nutrition values, strength training, right? It's been so undervalued and so downplayed for so long. Again, it's getting better. We're getting more and more strength coaches out there putting more emphasis on it, getting the older population to lift weights that right there that's what it is the classic if you're past this age you shouldn't be lifting weights type of thing. And I know that again we're getting out of that, but that was such a common thing just 10, 15 years ago. You're going to hurt yourself, your back hurts because you're lifting weights. No, 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 no. That would be one of those misconceptions is deadlifts are bad for you. Presses are bad for your shoulders. Running is bad for your joints, right? Just these kind of stereotypical blanket statements that demonize certain exercises or certain modalities of exercise. Running is not bad for you. Running with bad form is bad for you, right? Deadlifting is not bad for you. Deadlifting with poor form is bad for you. Back squatting is not bad for you. Back squatting with bad form is, right? You get the point. So really, I guess I'd say nutrition values, heart rate zones, and then just overall like demonization of certain exercises. Like they're this isn't bad for you in general, right? If you have a bad shoulder, it might be bad for you, right? Or if you've got a bad back or a slipped disc, you might be mindful with certain exercises, but that does not mean they are just blanket bad, right? The classic leg press is bad for you. The leg extension is bad for your knees. Like that, none of that is the case, you know? Doing these things improperly is what's bad for you.
Love it. That's awesome. All right. So we're going to talk a little bit about the VO2 max and the metabolic testing here in a little bit that you do. But, metabolism is something that, a lot of people talk about. And it's kind of one of those things too, where it's like, you hear it all the time. Oh, yeah, well, I've hit 30. Yeah. So my metabolism just isn't the same as it used to be and all that. So, what is metabolism, first of all? What causes it to slow down? And how can you, as you age, help that metabolism continue to stay, up to speed and help you achieve what you want to achieve?
So we'll start with what is metabolism. Metabolism is, if you look at the textbook definition, it's the sum of all of the processes that your body is going through on a daily basis, right? So digestion, movement, breathing, brain function, all of these mechanisms and processes. Some use energy, some require, all of them use energy, is what I'm trying to say, right? And the way that we kind of wrap this all up into what is metabolism is we generally will put an energy expenditure on that, what your metabolism is, meaning how many calories per day do you burn. My metabolism, my resting metabolic rate is 1900 calories, right? That's generally how we think of a metabolism. And so a lot of things go into metabolism, right? So your body composition is the number one thing, right? The taller you are and the more muscle mass you carry. And sorry, ladies, but if you're a man, you're just naturally going to have a higher metabolism than your equal female counterpart, right? That's just how it works. More muscle means more metabolic activity. Less muscle means less metabolic activity. Your lifestyle. Do you work a desk job, or are you a trainer who's always on his feet? Are you a roofer that is constantly for 12 hours nonstop outside working hard? Do you work out every day? Blah, blah, blah. All of these pieces end up being your total daily energy expenditure. So you burn more than your resting metabolic rate. You burn calories by eating food because you need to digest that food. You burn calories by walking to work, by doing your exercise, by blah, 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 right? And so metabolism really is just the sum of all of those things. And we're all different because of the differences in all of those pieces of metabolism, right? We are all going to be a little bit different body composition. We're all going to be a little bit different in terms of our daily activity. We're all going to be a little bit different and so on and so forth, right? Some of us like to have one meal a day versus 5 meals a day, right? All of these little things end up building into our total daily energy expenditure. If you eat less than your total daily energy expenditure in terms of calories, you will lose weight. If you eat more than your total daily expenditure in terms of calories, you will gain weight. This is the the first, it's what is it? Newton's law, I think. Conservation of energy. It's neither created nor destroyed, right? It has to be transferred. And so what you eat is being stored or burned. Nothing else. It's not magic. I may have gotten a little bit off what your ultimate question there was. I know we wanted to talk ultimately what is metabolism, what makes up metabolism. I think there was another kind of question tucked
Yeah.
in there that I'm
So,
missing.
like, people say like, "Hey, my metabolism's slowing down because I'm
There we go.
aging or whatever." How do
Yeah.
you combat that myth?
So, yeah. So, really, our metabolism does not slow down with age. We slow down with age. What we used to do in college, our rec basketball every Tuesday, Thursday night, we don't do that anymore. And we didn't start doing anything in place of it, right? Our walking to class for 4 hours a day now turned into an 8 hour desk job, right? It's not simply you hit an age and things slow down. It's as you age, you generally just slow down when it comes to what you do on a daily basis, right? Your walks might get slower. You might not have any time for your walks anymore, so they don't even happen anymore, right? You're at your desk for 8 hours versus on your feet for 8 hours, but you're really stressed at work, and so now you eat to combat that stress, right? Really, there's no age-related slowdown in metabolism. The slowdown in metabolism comes from the decrease in lean mass or increase in body fat, right? And then really the decreased energy expenditure. People just do less as they age, and unless you are like consciously trying to combat that, your metabolism will slow down. It's not your metabolism slowing down though, it's you not fueling your metabolism. You're not doing the workouts like you used to. You're not doing the walks like you used to. You're sitting more than you used to, blah blah blah, right? And so that, I guess that is also going back to the whole myth thing in my world. That's another one. You don't just slow down because you hit 35 or 40 or anything like that. Yeah.
Love that. Yeah. I mean, and you hit another, nail on the head is like, and it's something that we see a lot. And just, I'm sure you see it a lot too. When people say, I just don't have time to do it anymore. I'm too busy. What do you tell someone when, I'm sure you hear it a lot, what do you tell someone when they say, Kevin, like what you're saying sounds great. I just don't have the time. What do you tell
Yeah.
them?
Well, I'll usually basically just get honest with them and be like, okay, so tell me what you do every day. Break down your day. You wake up, blah, 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 blah. I don't think I've ever had that conversation end with not finding time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If you just really kind of have someone be brutally honest with themselves, okay, you wake up at 6, okay, what do you do before work at 9? Right? What is that 3 hours composed of, you know? Very, very few people make that excuse and let it, and it's actually valid. You know, it's everybody's got time to take care of themselves. This you get one body, and if you can't make the time to take care of it, then ultimately that's a mixed up priorities. That's not you not having time. We all have time to carve out 20 to 30 minutes every day to do something for our bodies. And let's say I do come across that 0.01% of someone that doesn't have any time, then I would say the main thing we need to focus on is nutrition and sleep habits and the things that we don't really think about when we think of a training program, you know, sun exposure, getting outside, making sure your sleep schedule is regulated, make sure you're getting enough protein. You can change your body composition dramatically without ever stepping foot in a gym, right? You can really do a lot with your nutrition and your lifestyle habits. And so if someone really didn't have the time, that would be my focus is, okay, well, you do have time to eat better. You eat every day. You have time to prep your meals. Let's make better meals, you know.
I love it. Yeah, I was reading a book, the 10X Rule by Grant Cardone, and he suggested in there. He's like, I hear too many times. I don't got time for this. I don't got time for that. It's like, well, why don't you do a time audit and just see, where's like you said, where's all your time going? Because I'm sure you can find some time in there where you're just wasting. I mean, I did a while ago, and I was like, wow, I spend a lot of time on my phone. Just
Well, yeah,
and not even, not even just scrolling, just like I might just be looking at, reading an article about something. I love sports. So I looked at the little app thing. It's like you were on Bleacher Report and ESPN for 2.5 hours, right? And it's like, but okay, right. Not that it's bad, but could I read this while I'm on a bike? Could I,
bingo,
you know,
bingo,
there's ways to incorporate it in. Like you said, very, very rarely, I think, will you ever find someone that is like, I just really don't have time. Like, if you really, like, I think what it boils down to is if you want to make it a priority, you can,
bingo,
right?
bingo. Yeah.
So,
Everyone that wants to have time finds the time. If
exactly.
you don't want to have time, you're not going to find the time, you know.
Yeah. And it's all habit based too. I mean, you see it here where people come in like, well, I prioritized, my business or whatever it was, and they're very well off financially. And then, but their health is just gone, right? And they're like, and it's hard for them to flip that switch and say, okay, well, I'm gonna not spend as much time over here like I used to. I'm gonna spend more time here, and it's a hard thing to switch. So if you can, but I guess what I'm trying to say is there is ways to do it. You just have to prioritize it. So
Yeah. And really, the earlier on into your life that you start building the habits, the easier it's going to be to keep those habits long term. I mean, you can train an old dog new tricks for sure, right? But the sooner you develop habits, the sooner they're going to stick with you, ingrain in you. And you're the 60-year-old that's never broken his routine. I've gone to the gym 5 or 6 days a week since I was 25. I've never stopped. If if you don't fall into that habit and that grind and the discipline of really just showing up consistently, it will always feel like that. It's going to feel like, oh, I'm giving this up to do this. But if it's always been a part of your day, you're not giving anything up. You're just continuing what you've always done. Yeah.
exactly. Love
And
it.
I like what you said because not every minute you're on your phone is wasted. You're reading educational articles, you're looking into science stuff, you're looking to, you're sending emails for work, blah blah blah. It's not all time wasted, right? But we just got to be mindful of of that exactly.
Love it. All right. So let's get into the weeds a little bit about what the tests that you offer, the VO2 max, the metabolic testing. I think it's really cool what you do, why you do it, giving people the data that is needed to be successful, because so many people they try this and they try that, they try this. And, if they just knew, hey, this is what I have to hit. This is the heart rate I need to hit. And these are the amount of calories I need to eat or whatever. It would help solve a lot of the problems. So tell us a little bit, like, so someone books a session with you to do VO2 max metabolic testing. What does that look like?
Sure. Okay. So ideally we get both tests on someone. We start with your RMR. We lay you under a canopy. You're laying on your back. You're hooked up to my machine. There's a tube that's collecting all of the air you're breathing, right? Most of the time this doesn't take any more than 10 or 15 minutes. And ideally I tell all of my clients, try to fall asleep, right? The idea of this test is to see how many calories you burn at rest every day, not fidgeting, not, whatever. So 10 or 15 minutes of just breathing, hanging out, that's going to give me your RMR. Back up 10 minutes. Remember that RMR is not your total calories spent every day. It's our building. It's where we start. It's our foundation. We know you burn these at the end of every day. And the cool part about the RMR test is I can see of those X amount of calories, what's the percentage of carbs and fats being used, right? So that gives us our basis for your nutrition program, right? You burn this every day. This is your body composition. This is how you use carbs and fats. We need to have this as your basis, right? Then we take you over for the VO2 max test. Normally done on a treadmill, sometimes on a bike, a row erg, it doesn't really matter. The key is I have to be able to have a way to linearly increase your workload. Treadmills are usually best. I can just press the incline or the speed button, right? The idea here is when we're done with our testing session, I want to have every part of the spectrum of your metabolism, right? The resting metabolic rate test gives us the very bottom chill part of your metabolism. The VO2 max test is going to be a graded exercise test, meaning gradually getting harder until it ends. That's a linear increase. And so we know that we've got the bottom of your metabolism with RMR, and we're about to work you through the entire rest of your metabolism. Bretton, you remember we got you on the treadmill. We had you stand for a minute. We had you walk super slow for a minute. We then had you get to a brisk walk for a minute. And then I took over, and every 30 seconds or a minute, I made that incline harder. And we went until you absolutely could not, right? Something stopped you, leg fatigue, heavy breathing, total body exhaustion, right? But the idea is we got you to the point where you had to stop. Kev, I got nothing left, dude. I can't keep going. I'm going to fall off this treadmill. By the end of that, now we have rest and every beat of your heart rate until max, right? The RMR gives us the foundation of your nutrition program. I'm not really looking at your VO2 max a whole lot during your VO2 max test, to be honest with you. To build your training program, I'm looking at those two thresholds we were talking about earlier so that I can develop your heart rate zone system. When you leave this test, you're going, oh, well, not right away, but you'll get a report and it's going to have your nutrition guidance, how you should be eating on a daily basis to achieve your goals. Say you want to lose 15 pounds in 15 weeks. I'm working that all into your nutrition goals, all while using your exercise data to make sure we're fueling your exercise properly, right? So we want to always make sure that after this test, you leave with a prescription, right? 3 times a week, you should be in this zone for this amount of minutes. Once a week, you should be getting into this zone for this amount of minutes. You should be strength training this many days for this long, right? On your exercise sheet, you're going to get all of your zones broken down. Zone 1, rest to 110. Zone 2, 111 to 132. Zone 3, 1 blah, 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 right? And so the idea is if I were to never see you again, you would have everything you need in that report to make progress for at least the next 6 or 12 months. I say that because as long as you are getting fitter or progressing, there will be a point that you graduate from your old zones, you're fitter, so your old zones no longer apply to your new fit body, right? So it's all usually done in about an hour, maybe 75 minutes at the very most. There's 5-6 minutes of hard work towards the end of the VO2 max test. But again, you remember the majority of that was just getting to the hard part, right?
Right. Right.
Um, and you leave with knowing exactly what you need to do on a daily basis or, how whatever your workout frequency is. If you work out 4 times a week, I'll tailor your prescription to your 4 times a week frequency. Always making sure that you know what you need to do to improve.
Love it. Yeah. And for real, guys, it's literally like a prescription. You get it, you know exactly what you got to hit, and the guesswork is gone. So it's totally worth an investment. And I love it. So, all right, just a couple more questions for you, Kevin. So you mentioned, you've been doing this for a long time. You mentioned too that you were, maybe not the most athletic kid growing up, right? And that's kind of what pushed you really into this world of like, hey, I want to hone in on this. And you see a lot of different people that come to you, all different walks of life, different, goals. And you see people that feel stuck, and the title of the podcast is Unstuck, right? We're stuck spiritually, financially, physically. You can be stuck in lots of areas of life.
Mhm.
What would you tell someone that comes to you, or what do you tell people that come to you and say, I've tried everything, I've tried this, I've tried that. I feel stuck. I just don't know what to do. What would you tell someone?
My first question is, have you tried this? And normally, most people have not had an O2 max test or an LMR test. Um, and so those people, I really just place emphasis on if you've never measured what your body does and tried to work with it, then you haven't tried everything, right? And so we need to work with our metabolism, not against it. And if we don't even know what our metabolism is doing, then it's really hard to know whether you're working against or with it, right? And so for the people that come to me saying, I've tried everything, I'm stuck, I'm blah blah blah, I've done it all, I'd say, give me 2 months. Give me even 4 weeks. Execute this program and you're gonna see immediate results. I mean, you really will. Once you start working with your body and giving it the dosages of each medication that it needs, right? The low intensity cardio, the high intensity cardio, the strength training. Once you get that workload all balanced out, you will be amazed at what your body hasn't been doing for you because you haven't been doing what it needs you to do for it, right? And so I would say give me a month. Trust the process. It's going to be very different. We're going to be doing stuff you've never thought of even considering, right? But trust the process. Give me a month, and I guarantee you we're going to make some progress.
Love it. I love it. All right. Hey, Thank you for taking the time out of your day to, talk with us a little bit. So real quick, we've got an event coming up on July
Yeah.
25th at Hydroar. So just give us a little bit of a preview. What can people expect if they come out and participate in this event?
For sure. Yeah. One, thank you again for the opportunity. I'm super excited about it. It's going to be awesome. I think we've already got like 15 people signed up. It's going to be great. I've done a handful of these kind of metabolic optimization talks, right? So we're going to get a little bit more into the weeds than you and I did today. We're going to break down a little bit more what each part of the metabolism is. We're going to break down a little bit more some of the myths that you brought up, metabolism slows with age. No, it doesn't. This actually happens, right? We're going to really just all things metabolism, right? How to train with your metabolism, not against it. How to fuel for performance, not just losing weight, right? They can both happen at the same time. If you want to fuel for performance, get better at your sport, but also change your body composition, we can do that, right? And so think optimizing performance, think optimizing routine, how to eat properly, how to train properly, how to balance out your workload properly, how to make sure you're achieving the right intensities, how to build your week, how to build your week of workouts based on what your goals are or your weekly limitations, right? A big thing I like to do with these workshops is Q&A. Everybody's got questions. Everybody has heard something about metabolism. Their friend told them this. Their doctor told them this. I've heard this, blah, blah, blah. Bring your questions. That's what I really want this to be, is a very interactive, hey, interrupt me. Hey, Kev, talk about that. What's that mean? I don't want it to just be me talking at people. I want it to be an interactive, me educating, but also, interacting, right? It's not just a lecture.
Love it. Yeah, it's going to be awesome, guys. If you haven't RSVP'd yet, I'm only going to allow maybe 5 more people. So
Hey, there
please,
we go. Put some pressure
RSVP
on me.
now. So, but awesome. Okay, last question for you, Kevin. Let's say they can't make it on Saturday. How can they find you? They hear this episode and they're like, man, yep, Kevin's my guy. I'm feeling stuck. I'm going to take him up on his offer and give him a month. I'm going to give him 2 months. How can they find you?
Sure, sure. I appreciate that. So you can go to kp3coaching.com. You can just hit the little contact tab and send me a message. That'll just email me directly. I'm on Instagram, kp3_coach. Give me a follow, shoot me a DM. And then I'm always on Facebook too, but I would just go Instagram, kp3_coach, kp3coaching.com. Reach out, send me a question. I'm all ears. If you just got questions, ask me questions. I'll help you out. If you're interested in testing, let me know. I also do remote coaching. So, if that's ever something that, you can't commit to in-person stuff, I can't commit to in-person stuff because of your location, whatever, I can always help you remotely. So send me a message, send me a DM, let me know what's up, give me a little follow, creep on me a little bit before you trust what I have to say. Make sure you like what I put out there. And yeah, I'm here to help, guys.
Love it. Awesome. Hey, thank you so much, Kevin. I appreciate it. Guys, if this episode resonated with you or you know someone that this could help, please share it out. That's how we're getting the word out. We don't have sponsors. We don't have anything like that. It's all word of mouth. So if you like this episode, feel like it could help you or help one of your friends or family, we invite you to share it. So Kevin, thank you for joining me again today. Remember, guys, that progress begins with one step, and we will see you next time.